Okay. Saludos. Hello, everyone. Hey, Gemma. Christopher Espinosa. What's going on, bro? The Q Borough. I see you. Greetings, Kimberly. How are you? Miss Reyes. Ida Mabriga. Mabriga. Saludos. A los compañeros. How you guys doing out there? Hope you guys having a good Sunday and winding down the weekend, getting ready for the work week. I have a special guest on tonight. He's from the Vincentian community. Vincentian. Hope I'm saying that right. Don't get mad at me, Gemma. Sally Mason, how are you today? We're going to have a conversation about some history, some music. We're going to talk a little bit about some music. I see a lot of parallels, musically speaking, from St. Vincent and the Garifuna community. Nelson, ¿cómo está usted? Saludos, how you doing? Mabriga. Hey, ¿cómo está, Cristi? Saludos, Mabriga. How you doing? Hope you guys can hear me well. I've been having some technical difficulties in these Facebook live discussions. If someone could just let me know if they could hear me clearly, that would be great. Thank you for sharing, brother Joseph. If you guys could share the video, that would be great too. With any commentary with the questions, that would be great as well. Hey Trish, how you doing? Good evening, Mabriga. Buenas noches. So I'm gonna get Roger on. Okay, so you guys can hear me. Thank you, Gemma. That's important because these discussions, I believe, are very vital. I think they're educational. What about now, Sally? Can you hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. Okay. Because like I was saying, these discussions are very important from the educational standpoint, and I believe that we could learn from each other, especially people from St. Vincent and the other surrounding islands in the Caribbean. I think we have yet to tap into our resources in terms of working together and creating some type of community around our culture rather, because we have similar cultures from the different islands in the Caribbean. One of the things that Melinka, ¿cómo está usted? Sister Price, how are you? Dilcia Canales, ¿cómo está? Buenas noches, Mabriga. But like I was saying earlier, we have a lot of things to share. I definitely believe in the cultural philosophy of the Garifuna community. Amuru Buni, Amuri Nuni, which is basically I for you, you for me. And we have to get back to that in creating these experiences. We have to learn how to trust each other and rely on each other for certain things. Because that's how it works in America. Some people do not understand it, but we have to work together in a community to make change. We have to create that change as a community. We have to initiate it. We have to evoke it. And that's the reason for our conversations, the ones that I've been having lately. I've had a couple of people from the Garifuna community, Maria Herrera, Joseph Guerrero, last Sunday, I believe it was. Yeah, I think it was last Sunday. And then this week, I had a conversation with Dr. Ronnie Castillo about the situation in Honduras, and a model, a socioeconomic model that we should be creating within the Garifuna community so we could get back to the production side that we had in St. Vincent. But we're going to continue. We have a lot to talk about. What's going on, Brother Kwame? Uh, Ghana. I believe you're from Ghana, correct, Kwame? I've been seeing some of your posts, and I see the links with our culture and yours and over in Ghana. And we have to do a Facebook Live too, Kwame. Let me know when you're ready, because I definitely want to share and see the links with your culture and ours, because we have a very strong link to different African cultures from Honduras as Garifuna people. Aquí todo bien, hermano. Oh, Kwame, you know Spanish. That's good. That's good. Where did you learn how to speak Spanish, Kwame? Where did you pick up the language? I'm assuming in school. I picked up the language via my grandmother. Well, my parents, because my first language is Garifuna when I came over here from Honduras. That's all I spoke. I learned English in school, and I spoke Spanish with my parents. But yeah, if you guys could share the conversation. Let me see if I can invite Brother Roger on. You guys could just bear with me for a second. Okay, let me do a search on it. Oh, I typed in the wrong slot. Oh boy. My hands are so thick and my phone is so small. Okay. You guys could just bear with me for 1 second. Gotta send Brother Roger an invite so I could bring him on. Brother Opil from the Taino community, I believe. Type in which community you're from, brother. I remember meeting you at this past spring at the Taino Awards. I believe you are Taino. Judith. Mabriga. Ide. Saludos, hermano Rosado. So I just sent Roger an invite. We should have brought him on. Okay, let's see what's going on here. This is technology. Saludos, hermano Rosado. Vamos a estar hablando con un hermano de Yurumein. Él hace muchos eventos sobre la cultura de San Vicente. Y vamos a hablar un poco de lo que él hace y de la historia del pueblo conocido como Yurumein, que como usted sabe nuestras descendencias son de ahí, como gente garífuna. Es una de las narrativas de nosotros, pero sabemos que nosotros estamos encontrando nuevos datos sobre dónde originó el pueblo garífuna, y parece que nosotros tenemos mucho tiempo en Honduras, al lado de las canciones o los himnos de nosotros ancestrales. Estamos hablando de originalmente hondureños, acuerdo de nuestras canciones ancestrales en nuestra religión que se llama Dugu. Okay, so just sent Brother Roger an invite, and he should be coming on shortly. Mabriga, no furia Palacio, ida aí. Okay, so we should be connecting with Brother Roger right now. Okay.
Greetings, King.
Mabriga. Greetings. Saludos.
Greetings.
How you doing?
Pretty good, man.
So-
Pretty good.
So, Brother Raj, I mean, this has been a conversation a long time in the making. because I
True.
know we had our conversations on the side, but I think that, you know, it would be beneficial and other people to see us talk about, your experience as a promoter in New York City, because I know you do a lot of Vincentian themed events.
Yes.
I know when I was working when I was at SOBs and I was doing events there, they told me, "Oh, you from St. Vincent? You could trace your lineage to St. Vincent. You should talk to Roger Mentalist." So that's the first time I heard your name. This was back in 2012, I believe.
Yeah. Possibly 2011, around that time frame.
Right, right. You was doing the theme parties. I know you had like a
Yeah,
Halloween
I
theme
used to
party.
do a weekly in SOBs at one time, Soca in the City.
Right, right. Yes, Soca in the City. I believe I went to one event.
Yes.
I think I went to one event
Yes,
in
you
Soca
did.
in the City.
You did.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think we knew each other back then, though.
But I've been seeing your face even though like around the same time, not really knowing like who you were until Larry had mentioned to me first your name, and
Right.
and then I think because I think one time it was around they had a he had explained to me that there was a big Garifuna celebration in SOBs.
Right,
And the way he
2012.
spoke about it, it kind of drew me in. So I was like, really, I really wanted to know who put on this show.
Right.
And I think one time I was there, it was just finishing before my event. So I got a chance to take in some of the sound and dance, before my event, which I was really fascinated with.
Yeah, it's just like, my team and shouts out to Hector. This is a collective effort from my team and I in getting everyone's attention in terms of paying attention to our music. Because I believe it fits in line with a lot of African genres and Caribbean genres as well. And
Yes,
as I'm learning more and more about the music, we have a rhythm that's the precursor to like a lot of Caribbean rhythms. It's called gunche, and I'm gonna send you some songs with that gunche rhythms. I mean, I within that rhythm, I hear soca, I hear the raga soca that comes out of St. Vincent, um, and I hear other Caribbean genres within that particular gunche rhythm. And
true.
one of the things I want to mention to you is that Garifuna DJs, they've been up on St. Vincentian music because we have DJs in the Garifuna community that know who Beckett is, that know who Winston Soso is, and what they have done. I remember, I believe her name is Judy Boucher.
Yes,
She has a song that was a hit with like every Garifuna party that you go to or household, they will play that song. I forget the name of the song, but I know it was made by Judy Boucher. Now, my question to you is, what part of St. Vincent are Winston Soso, Judy Boucher, and Beckett? Because I want to know, because geographically, where the Garifuna community is on the north, east side of the island. Fancy,
well,
Owea, Sandy Bay.
I know for sure that Beckett is from the community of Layou.
Layu.
That's on the leeward side of the island.
Okay.
And if I'm right, because I was like very young when Judy Boucher was, but I grew up on her music. I could still like as soon as you mentioned her, like one song just came to my mind. She might have been from Edinburgh, which is where Fort Charlotte is located.
Okay, Edinburgh. Now I know there
Yes.
was a lot of name
Um,
changes with the in terms of the in Saint Vincent in Vinci, the geography has been changed. Well, the names have been changed.
yes,
Okay.
I'm aware of that as well.
I was talking to Scorpion, and he told me he was from I can't pronounce it.
From Mesopotamia.
Right, but Mesopotamia was called something else before though. Before it was changed to Mesopotamia, Mavragua, it's a river.
Mariaqua.
Yes, that's a Garifuna name.
Marikwa is a Garifuna name. Marigua.
You see, the thing is that, and I'm really grateful for having this conversation with you because what I've realized is that a lot of our people
Hmm.
um don't know the full story.
Right.
And I think after the exile, everything where Garifuna is concerned was really suppressed. Because when I was growing up in school, they never really taught us the history, you know? So we was taught something else.
Right.
It's later on because I mean, I think some of us have what you call ancestral memory,
Right.
and that ancestral memory stays intact no matter what. It's very hard for it to be diluted within some of us. So I always had that yearning to learn or to understand. So during some of my younger years, I took the time out to do a lot of research. And thankfully that today we have the internet, which kind of make things a little bit easier. That information now is at the click of your fingertips.
Right.
Before you had to really get physical books in order for you to really get certain information.
Right.
But now we are able to make that global connection now that a lot of other brothers, brethren and sisters that I've connect with. And I think now everything is coming full circle, you know? Um, there's time and season for everything. So I think this is our season now. This is really the enlightenment period that we are on, and we are making that connection again, you know?
Right. We're going right now. We're currently going through a renaissance in the community in terms of us revisiting our history and comparing that to the songs that we have in the community that talk about our history, which I'm very interested in learning more about. I'm currently working with an artist. His name is Bodoma, and he sings the ancestral roots, traditional music from our community. And within the we have a cultural philosophy and a spirituality or religion attached to that. Everything is attached to the religion, which is called Dugu or Ugulendo. And the hymns in these songs tell of our experience as a community. There's a specific song that talks about our experience crossing the Sahara Desert. There's a song in talking about, or a series of songs that talk about our experience with the French and the wars. So, I mean, this conversation with you is very important because first I want to find out the areas that the artists are from, because that would give me a sense of where geographically their ancestors are from. Because we still have people in the community, in the Garifuna community, that speak the language and they have all this oral history with them. And I just kind of want to merge that information together and share it with you guys in St. Vincent. Because we preserve that in Honduras. We preserve all
Thanks.
the rhythms.
Yeah, I have a few of my colleagues on here because what's happening is both from your feed and my feed,
Right, they
which
can
is
see.
great too because we are drawing in a lot more people.
Right. And I
And
hope you guys could share that. I just want to make an
yes,
announcement,
guys,
Roger.
please share the live. Give me 1 second. I have to turn this off on my laptop.
Super Dex, Wagwan.
Yeah, Superdex is a great brethren too. I was having a
Oh, yes.
conversation. A matter of fact, the same conversation that we've been having earlier is the same conversation that me and Dex and a few others was planning to do. But I think the time is right now because I would last year I wasn't aware that Facebook had this live feature because I don't
Right.
think it's a year old yet. And
About a year.
we we are gonna continue, this conversation. And
Right.
I know it's gonna move from strength to strength because earlier I had an event in August called Tribal.
Right.
And the idea behind the event was us making that tribal connection. I know everyone, all the other islands have like Grenada, they're very into the Juve culture per se. So
Right.
they um carnival depiction when it comes to Juve is that they play what you call jab jab,
Right.
which is basically everyone is dressing in black and it's rooted deep within our history as well. You know,
Okay.
so what I wanted to do is to create an event so that we could have in people in the diaspora could have come out and identify themselves culturally with whatever tribe that you might have been from.
Right.
Next year, I'm gonna put a lot more effort into it so that it turn into something bigger. But this conversation is very important. Upon I would say maybe about 2 weeks before the event, I had the privilege of meeting with James Lavelle, which is
Right.
you might probably be familiar.
Yes. Shout out to
Yes.
Brother James. We know James.
Yes, with James and another brethren, and we had probably maybe like an extended conversation that lasted maybe like about two and a half, 3 hours,
Right.
discussing some of the same things that we are talking about now. So I am grateful and happy that we are making this connection now, and I know it's gonna grow from strength to strength because our people need to know the half that has never been told.
Right.
And you guys are sitting on a wealth of information, which I think the country need in order, because like you say, even though there's a renaissance that's happening in your community, it's a global renaissance that's happening with black people on a whole, on the globe.
Right.
You know, um, our story is rich, and the rest of our people in the world need to know about it, you know, at this particular time
Right.
where cultures around the world are in danger. So, for example, how I see St. Vincent is that a lot is missing, and it's simply because we don't have that historical connection with our roots the way we
Mm.
should.
Okay.
And only way we're gonna do that is if we somewhat repatriate the knowledge and the people, the original people, back to the land.
Right. Hmm. And that's very doable because we do have a lot of people that are retired from the Garifuna community. They usually set up, um, they move back home when they retire. I mean, St. Vincent could be another option for them to move back to. I mean, these are people that worked here for X amount of years and they have the economic resources to build in Honduras and in St. Vincent as well. So that's something that we could further explore. As you know, I was there in March, and I saw a lot of land from the leeward and windward side of the island. There was a lot of land there, and when I go to the supermarket, I was wondering why is everything imported? Why isn't it grown in St. Vincent with all this land and it's so much lushness and
You see, it's colonialization has really damaged our people, you know, um, and it would take a period of time for us to probably restore or repair the minds of the people because after a while people start getting more foreign minded. So at one point in time, farmers was looked down upon in the community. Fishermen was looked down upon in the community. So the only people who got respect somewhat was those who had maybe like a blue collar or white collar job per se. And when you look at those people now, they might have been tellers in the bank. You understand? Which is nothing to really glorify as a job per se. Now, everything comes from the land. And we
right,
have very rich land. We have fertile land. Some of the best, you know, agricultural lands in the Western Hemisphere. You know, there's a saying, if you throw a stone, that the stone would grow, that the place is so fertile. Everything grows like naturally. But a lot of people has abandoned the whole idea of farming because
mm,
now people got so Americanized per se. Uh, they want to import everything. And some of these things are happening too because of the trade agreements that some of these territories had with the IMF, which would be like another extended conversation again.
right,
So we really need to go back to the roots. Like for me, I'm planning to retire more than likely back to St. Vincent or maybe Dominica and become a farmer. That's my goal.
now St. Vincent currency is the EC, I believe, right? The
East, yeah,
European
East Caribbean dollar.
European dollar. Um, man, I'm okay. let's stick to the music. let's stick to the music and the cultural, because I have other questions in terms of that. Um, that cultural renaissance in St. Vincent, because I always wondered why St. Vincent. I don't hear a lot of Vincentian artists in comparison to the other Caribbean islands that produce music. Because I know there are a lot of artists in St. Vincent. I was checking out some music from Hyper 4000, Mason. It's a brother named Mason. He makes some real good
Yes.
music. Scorpion, I met him last year at the Indigenous Day event. Why do you think the Vincentian music hasn't gone out to the masses like
Well,
the other island music have, like Trinidad
well,
and
at one point in
Jamaica?
time, you would have had, I would say, probably from the late 80s, mid 90s coming up. There was always an exchange between, I would say, Trinidad and St. Vincent in terms of, because our music really revolves around the carnival and the carnival season is soca. So there's actually a carnival happening at every month of the year globally.
Right.
So it would happen that after Trinidad Carnival, people look forward to St. Vincent Carnival, and then you would find like a large migration of Trinidadians would come to St. Vincent at one point in time. So the music was right up there, but sometimes I would say people fall off, and another island would take it up. So you would find maybe when things got a bit dim in St. Vincent, you would find some artists from Barbados blew up on the scene. And then before you know it, you would find some artists from Grenada. Like every year, it shifts from one point in time. But we have always maintained an a very unique style of soca, which come back to what you were saying before. Everything is in the rhythm. It's there.
Right.
It's still there. But we have people like Kevin Little, who has crossed over into the international market. You have artists like Skinny Fabulous. They're making waves per se. But I think what I usually tell people is that you have to embrace your own first before before somebody else embrace it. If you don't love your own thing, don't expect somebody else to love it. You understand? So there's been a fight on the local scene where the music is concerned, and some of the musicians, they have a way that they've been making music to suit the local arena. So sometimes they might sing a song and only the local people might be able to relate to it. Yes, you might get a road march or you might become soca monarch. But on the international scale, people really don't understand what they're saying. So you would find people now like the Masons, like Scorpions. These guys are more, I would say, crafty in terms of the production of music. And they're packaging a product that is appealing to the international market of things. But again, there's still work to be done. You know, it's a very interesting time in the like this year per se. St. Lucia has really been on the back burner where soca is concerned. They've had a few hits over the years, but this year they've really made like a serious impact musically. So it goes around in a circle. So things might die down in Trinidad for a little while, and then you hear again Barbados this year. Next year it might be Grenada. Next year the year after that might be St. Vincent. But again, it's us now. We have to, I would say, encourage the people who are producing the music. You understand? To not only design the music to fit the ears of the local people, but also for our international audience. And I think that conversation is being had within the community.
Bomani had a couple of songs that were, man, they were hits back in I believe 2013, and I believe he has a cultural organization in St. Vincent, or he's
You're
the
probably right.
director. But if you don't search for the music, it's hard to find, man. Like I'm in tune because I used to DJ, and I just scour the internet for music, or I listen to a mixtape. When I heard that Bomani song, I understand what you mean when you say that Vinci has a different sound. I feel like Vinci Soca it's kind of similar to Grenadian soca. It's very heavy on the bass.
Yeah.
Very heavy on the bass, and it's like it sounds like our punta music in Garifuna culture. It's very percussion based as well. Now,
You see, go ahead.
is there a particular organization that is in charge of the packaging and the marketing of the music on St. Vincent? Does the government get
Not
involved as well?
There might be, but not that I know of. And I think there is more to be done where it comes to the the tourist board. Um, Most of these artists, because I think for Skinny, he's managed by maybe a company from Barbados.
Right.
Um, Kevin Little started his own label and company as well that they do distribution. So there are people who are invested in the community. So I'm pretty sure within probably the next 3 to 5 years that we would definitely be stronger in the international market. But again, what I would like to touch on is like moving away from the music a little bit. Is
Hmm.
that because there's a number of Vincentians who are watching right now, and I'm pretty sure after people who might not be up around this time might go back and look at this video, is
Right.
that most Vincentians, believe it or not, don't know the full story of what happened with our people.
What do they know? Up to what point do they know in terms of?
It's very hard for me to really answer that question because what I've known didn't really come from back home or in the schools back home. There was people like Dr. Adrian Fraser for years. Um, every now and then that they would have certain programs on the radio and they would try to enlighten the masses about what took place back then. And I think recently there was someone published a book. I was looking it up on Amazon not too long ago. It's something that I have to order. But there have been people that I was fortunate to meet that might have shared certain portions of the story with me, and then from my own research, I might have broadened my knowledge or scope. But again, my cup is still empty. But what I know for sure is that the culture in Honduras, or I would say going up the road, is intact. It's still intact. The language is intact. The history is intact. I'm going to give you the story that happened to me about probably 5 or 6 years ago. I was going to a boat ride, and I met this friend of mine who lives in California, and I get to understand that there's a very strong Garifuna community in California as well.
Yes, in Los
So
Angeles.
she brought a friend with her, and when she introduced me as a person who was from St. Vincent, this female, and mind you, if you look at her, you would have never expected the reaction that came from her. She was
Right.
well dressed like a model,
Right.
and as soon as she found out I was from St. Vincent, she kicked off her stilettos on the boardwalk, and she started clapping her hand, and she was singing a song which the Garifuna people were singing when they was taking them from St. Vincent to Rotan.
Right. That's the national anthem.
So before that, I have never heard that song. That was my first time, but right away I connected. My paws, the hairs on my hand stood up. My head, I have like what you call a hair raising experience.
Right.
And
Right.
when she sang that song for me, it's like I wanted to know more now. You understand? So if she have this information because she was explaining to me the song,
Hmm.
I said, if she have this information, what would happen to the people who are deeper involved in the community, like yourself?
Right.
So what I would like you to do probably is to summarize from your knowledge what happened, I would say, probably after the wars.
I had that hair raising experience in 1997 when I saw a delegation from St. Vincent attend the 200th anniversary of our arrival to Honduras. I had the same hair raising experience. I was there, believe it was under President Prime Minister Mitchell. He sent a representative from St. Vincent to Honduras. Um, our history, we're still discovering it. To be honest with you, Roger, I mean, we have 5 narratives in terms of the history. But you asked after the Carib Wars, um, Satuye, our chief, who lived around his area, the area that he commanded was called Chateau Belair, where he has the obelisk, right? He was assassinated by Major Alexander Leith from the British Army. After his assassination in 1796, in I believe it was March 11th that he was assassinated, they rounded up all the Garifuna people with an emphasis on the dark-skinned ones. Because remember, we have light-skinned, fair-skinned Garifuna people as well in the community.
Yeah.
But they made an emphasis to round out the black ones, the black Caribs. As you know, in the Eurocentric worldview, it's black and white. I mean, there's nothing there's no room for a gray area. But they made an emphasis on the dark-skinned Garifuna people. They rounded up roughly about, some books say 5,000, but I'm thinking more of 10,000. They put them on, I believe, 2, probably 3 boats and took them to Baliso, which the intent was to kill them because they didn't supply them with any food or water. And from what my knowledge, Baliso, it's uninhabitable territory. That's why nobody occupied it. So they were there for 9 months. After that, half of the population died because they didn't have any food or water. So the population that were still alive, they were taken to Jamaica. So the boats could be refueled and restocked with supplies. From Jamaica, they went to Roatan. And they arrived to Roatan in 1797, April 12th, rather. So when in Roatan, I'm learning now that it was governed by the Garifuna. Like, we were the only people there. And I'm not listening, I'm not going by the history books. I'm going by our oral tradition. It was our nation state at one point.
I think that's the best way of kind of gathering the information.
Right. We have the songs, the hymns that we have in our traditional ancestral songs. I'm still working on understanding them. And somebody's posting. How you doing, Ava? How you doing,
She
Trish?
said, please look up the history of Bloody Bridge.
See, I'm not aware of that history. Bloody Bridge, I have no idea what that is or where is that.
Well,
in,
what I was told, I don't know if it's the same region that I think is before you get to Sandy Bay.
Okay.
Because from my understanding is that the British was trying to get into the northern part of the island, and they made several attempts but failed because every time they tried to make land, the Garifuna people would always repel them.
Right.
So, okay. Oh, she said it was an ambush in Oya.
Okay.
So I am not too familiar. I've been to Sandy Bay, Oya region probably about 3 times in my younger years. But I remember on one excursion that I was someone was retelling the story about, I heard it as Bloody Bay and not Bloody Bridge, but it would have been the same thing. So from my understanding is that the Black Caribs allowed them because they saw them circling the island and they was preparing for them at one particular time. So they dug themselves in, and where the British came in was like a very that part of the bay is very rough.
Oya, the waters in Oya were pretty rough.
Yes.
When I was there.
So they allowed them to come in, I guess maybe like later on in the night. But the indigenous was very well prepared for them, and they massacred a lot of the British forces that came through.
And this happened in Oia. Around what year
Yes.
was that roughly? If Ava, if you could, if you know the year.
I am not at liberty. So Ava knows the story. Maybe she might be able to add some date
Okay.
to that particular timeline.
Because I didn't
But
read
this is
that.
something
I didn't
this
read
is
that.
something that has been known by the local people.
Okay. Wow. I mean, when I was, Oia is a very significant place. I mean, I saw a little boy that resembled my son over there when I was there in March. And it was like, man, we have to be we have to do a better job of connecting as a community. Um, I don't think we do a great job at doing that. Like I've seen sprinkles of Vincentians in the Bronx, and coming to our events, and we do have a contingent that goes to a lot of Vincentian events here from the Bronx and other parts of the city as well. I think we have to make an inclusive event so that everyone could come somewhere neutral like Manhattan, in which we could have workshops. Maybe we could do it at the Schomburg Center or at Brooklyn Museum, even though that's kind of far for people. But
Yeah.
we just got to make the information accessible to people, because we have a lot of stories of people from Dominica going to Honduras after the exile, after they found out that their Garifuna relatives were exiled. There's a gentleman from Dominica. His last name is Sanchez. He left Dominica and helped found a seaport city called La Ceiba. And he ended up marrying a sister from Honduras. Her last name was Nunez, and they were one of the founding families of that particular um, city, which present day just inaugurated. They just had we had the elections, and that city, that Garifuna port city, originally established by Garifuna people, has a Garifuna mayor. So that's all these stories. We have to compile them. We have to hold symposiums. We have to hold workshops. Um, we have to make some people uncomfortable, even though I hate to put it in
No,
that way.
that
But a
is
lot of people
that is
feel very
exactly.
uncomfortable still, because the narrative in St. Vincent is that we're warlike, we're,
You
savages,
see,
and there's a
this is
certain
this is this
mindset that
is
was framed around us.
Pablo. Listen, right? I grew up on the island, so I experienced it firsthand. So what I understand about Europeans in a whole, and every way that they go and they colonize, the whole part of their mandate is to crush every information that was available to the indigenous people about their culture.
Right,
So you wasn't able to practice or sing your native songs.
right,
You understand? Or but our people still resisted and found a way how to blend, or maybe they create a hybrid, you understand, so that the culture would still pass down. Now we I'm trying to remember the name of the history books that we read, but we was taught all this nonsense about Christopher Columbus and Cortez and Henry Morgan, and the list goes on and on. But deep within my mind, again, going back to my ancestral memory, I always knew that this was bullshit.
right,
I just didn't have the information to rebuttal.
right,
So until I became more aware and I started seeking and things started coming to me, it made me now a bit more aggressive. And once you make that connection with your ancestry, it empowers you. You understand? It's like a child who never had his dad around,
right,
but every now and then he might hear stories of his father. And you would feel somewhat empowered even though that they are just stories. You understand?
right,
Because you have that point of reference. So when I started understanding the resistance that our people put up. You know, and seeing that we was the last country in the Western Hemisphere to be colonized by Europeans, that is something to be proud of. You know, every other island have their story, but none is as unique as ours.
Right.
So after the wars, every single Garifuna wasn't rounded up. They created a reservation out in Sandy Way and Owe, and they put certain, I would say, maybe what they refer to as the Yellow Caribs there. Right. But you still had places like Greg's, you had places like Stubbs, you had places like Chateau Belair, Duvalet, all these places. Now, when I was growing up, they would refer to some of these villages as bad village. Mm-hmm. So you would hear people say, boy, don't mess with them Greg's man, because them Greg's man would chop you up. You understand? But all this is like at one point in time, the slavers or colonizers would tell the slaves, do not go into the bush, because if you go there, the Caribs, meaning the flesh eaters, the cannibals, would catch you and eat you.
Right.
So that was a story that they created to keep the slaves on the plantation. You understand? But conditions were so bad within some places, they would say, you know what, screw that, we are going to run off anyway. And what I learned to understand is that you couldn't join in with some of these, well, the Black Carib community, unless you go back and free another slave.
Okay.
So it's not just you had to run off of the plantation and you get to join with them in the hills and now you're part of the clique. You had to go back now to prove yourself and free somebody else, and then you got initiated within the society. So there is a place close to Stubbs called Maroon Hill. You just don't give places name like that, Maroon Hill, unless there was maroons.
Right.
So you find now you have people like from Stubbs might have more of that aggressive nature in a sense to this day. But most of us don't know where it came from. It's because those regions on the island was the strongholds of the Garifuna people.
Now you said they were in Greg's, Stubbs, Chateau Belair, Duvalier, and Maroon Hill. Where exactly is Maroon Hill?
Baruli. Maroon Hill is located I would say above Stubbs or overlooking Stubbs.
Okay.
So you're not gonna call a place Maroon Hill unless that there was Maroons, there was the rebellious ones who was in the mountains there. And again, going back to this whole idea of the flesh eaters and cannibals, right? Now, when they taught us the history growing up, they would always tell us how the Arawaks was more peaceful, the Caribs was warlike. But this is my thing. If you're coming into my house, do you expect me to just give up my property without any resistance? Right. So this was the narrative from the British. You're trying to go in someone just said Chumaka, Rose Hall.
Yeah, I visited Chumaka. I had some great coconut water there. It's a nice view of the lushness. There was a lot of land in Chumaka when I was there. So you said that they, but there is a Carib and Arawaks are basically the same group. They just spoke a different language.
But remember this. There's a saying. The saying goes: if a person don't treat you right, that same person wouldn't teach you right.
Right.
So after they rounded up most of our people, and banished them from the mainland, we didn't expect these same colonizers to tell the story in our favor. So at one point in time, we actually looked at Christopher Columbus as someone who did something good. Some people was happy to say Columbus discovered such and such. Or Captain Bligh, which was another lie, brought the first breadfruit plant to St. Vincent. That's something for me that I don't buy, because I've traveled into the interior of St. Vincent. And breadfruit is not a thing that grows by seeds, that birds pollinate one plant and take a breadfruit seed and fly somewhere and drop it in the interior. There are old trees there. Maybe Captain Bligh probably brought a specific species of breadfruit to St. Vincent at a point in time. But I don't believe that bullshit. A matter of fact, I believe very little of what was told to us.
Right.
Before Dr. Henry Clark died, he was on WBAI. I think that was his last lecture that he gave on the radio, and he encouraged the people of St. Vincent to go back to France, to the libraries and the museum, because our history is just there sitting.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
And that day, I wish there was a way, maybe there's a way for me to probably get back that lecture that he gave on BAI. But just to show you how rich our history is. And he went there and saw that. I can't speak French. I could learn, but I would love to visit some of these museums sometime in the future.
Well, it's interesting that you bring in France, because we're now rediscovering that there was an intimate relationship between the French and the Garifuna people in St. Vincent. We traded with them. We traded tobacco, cassava, and sugar. In return, they gave us arms to fight the British, where they were trying to colonize. That's why it took them so long for them to colonize us, because we would squash them every place that they would go with the arms that were supplied by the British. Chateaubriand sent his children to boarding schools in Martinique, and he was a general of the French army. So that relationship is very, very intertwined. I hope to make it to France one day, to go to their national archives and visit their museums and see what they have about us, because the relationship with the French was very intimate. Even though they divided our land after we were exiled with the British, but they still played a role in our resistance against the British. So I'm not sure if that information has been shared, because I see a lot of...
is also saying that there's a gunpowder station that is still in Oya to this day.
A gunpowder station. I have to write that down. Where exactly in Oya is this, Ava? Because I was there, I was playing soccer with the boys. They have like a soccer field there, and then if you go down from that soccer field, there's a set of stairs that leads you down to the water, into the sea. Where exactly in Oya is that gunpowder station?
She says by the school.
Okay.
And then again, OES is not like that of a big place, so it shouldn't be too hard asking around.
Yeah, when I was on the island, it seems like a lot of the people did not know the history. I mean, they have little pockets of information in terms of it. I mean, when I was there with the cultural group, we were teaching the dances, Garifuna dances, and people were picking it up like it was nothing, like it was second nature to them. Even the children were picking it up without any issues. I mean, it's just, wow. I mean, at one point on the trip, I got to really think about, why, not just why, I know why, but the effect of how people could like socially engineer people in the way they think and in the way that they're socialized. Many people on the island, I can't say all the ones that I've met, but they basically didn't have any clue about Garifuna.
They don't
or what it is.
They don't
or
know because
what
the information has been suppressed. So our culture is pretty much whitewashed. You understand? Even some time ago last year, I think it was National Heroes Day, I ended up doing a live on Facebook, and I was upset because that's something that most Vincentians should be really proud of. But because we don't know the history, we are not able to connect with it in the way that we should. So it's funny now that there are Vincentians that's living out here in the diaspora, and sometimes because Facebook have this community, you would see when there's St. Patrick's Day parade that they are quickly, how quick they would put up a clover or an Irish flag, or there is the gay parade, and how quick that they would fly those banners. But when there is a National Heroes Day, something that is directly connected to you, that people seems not to care. And this is simply because people don't have the knowledge of what really took place during that period of time.
Wow.
There was also stories that I've learned that I hate using the term carrot, by the way, that the Garifuna people from St. Vincent, that they would leave St. Vincent and they would travel up to Dominica and St. Kitts and Nevis and all these places. And how they would do this is that they would go out in the ocean at a certain time of the month, because what happened is that there's what you call the Guinea current. So at a certain time of the month, the tide would pull up, going up to Guyana, to the Orinoco. And this tide would take these canoes, because they didn't have sailboats, all the way up, you understand, going to Dominica. Another thing, what was interesting is that how did they know that there was wars going on in Dominica? You understand? And they didn't have cell phones. How did they know that our people needed help up the road, and they rallied the troops and decided, you know what, we're going to sail up the road and fight this out? And then they would use the same current, which pulled down, because in St. Vincent, a certain time of the month too, if you spend a lot of time on the beach, you would see what we call a sea coconut, which is it's like a walnut that they would show up on the shores. But this is not something that is grown in St. Vincent. Is that when the Orinoco River is flooding, all these stuff get washed down all the way from Guyana and end up in St. Vincent.
That's amazing.
You understand? So they had a very in-depth knowledge of how the current flow and how they could read the star maps. They didn't have modern instruments like what we had now, but was able to navigate all throughout the other islands just using the stars.
It's interesting that you point out the stars, because I'm noticing now that there's a strong link between Garifuna people and people from Mali. And as you know, the Dogon in Mali, they're familiar with extraterrestrial. I mean, NASA studied these people, and they still can't figure out how much information that the Dogon people have in terms of the stars and its alignment and how it works.
Because when back then, like a very long time ago, the Dogon people was talking about Cyrus B. Before any modern day astronomers discovered this star that they call the dog star.
Okay.
And now it's like common knowledge. Where did these people got this information from? So someone asked a question here a while ago. So Michelle asked, is there a way that we could learn the language? She would love to learn. Michelle, there's actually people like James Lavelle, and I think probably he's been in St. Vincent now for maybe a little over 10 years.
Yes.
And he's one of the persons who's responsible for now teaching the younger children in St. Vincent the national anthem in Garifuna. And he has rewrote a lot of the sounds, the national songs of St. Vincent, like songs from Beckett, from various artists, into Garifuna. Myself and James spoke about doing a program like this. So I think within the coming months, for the new year, we should really, rally together and try to have this type of platform as much as possible, because again, we are going through that Renaissance period, and we are making the connection now. For all these years that the Europeans, I would say, has really suppressed us. One of the things, the gift that we have now is the internet. And I look at the music. I'm going to segue a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
At one point in time, I would say when Zimbabwe, South Africa, during the apartheid periods, when the distributors of reggae would send their albums to places like Zimbabwe or South Africa, the whites there would actually scratch out. Because they would make indentations on the records, because you know the records have the rigids.
Right.
So let's say they're playing a song, African liberate Zimbabwe. So when it get to that point, they wouldn't be able to hear Africans liberate Zimbabwe. So they was doing everything within their power to make sure that African people didn't know that the people in the West had a connection with them. But since the internet, it has really connected us globally. Now, at one point in time, a lot of people was afraid to identify with their ancestry. So you would find people from throughout the diaspora would want to claim everything else except their African origins or heritage. So you would find people saying, oh, I'm mixed, I'm 10% Irish, but they are more comfortable identifying with that that Irish rape gene than their 95% African, you understand, DNA. So now all of a sudden you find a lot of people now, they are more inclined to African fashion. You understand? They're gravitating towards African songs. Afrobeat is making like a serious impact. So slowly but surely, we are making that connection again. You understand? They could only keep us down but so long.
Right.
And like seeds, we are germinating when the conditions is right. So the conditions is right now. So the germination period has begun. There's nothing that they could do now to stop it. Not saying that they're not going to try.
It's interesting that you bring up Zimbabwe, because when Mugabe was coming to power, he overthrew the person that was in power at the time about 30 years ago. And one of the African brothers that I talked to a lot over here told me that they used that song by Bob Marley as inspiration to throw the other person out of power way back when. So the links have been there. I mean, even though they've, tried every way not to connect us, I mean, I've seen a strong connection musically with Congo, Cameroon. Again, Mali comes up. I was at a Salif Keita show in September, and the rhythms, they're all there. I mean, it's amazing how much we have in connection with these people. I mean, some of the rhythms from the Caribbean, or some of the soca that I hear from St. Vincent, have that African base to the music. And I don't think the Vincentian community knows that or understand how profound that is, being that we were the last island in the Caribbean to be colonized.
It not only in the Caribbean, in the Western Hemisphere, they need to know that. It wasn't just the Caribbean. We was the last country in the entire Western Hemisphere to be colonized by Europeans. Just like Haiti became the first black republic, we also could own that about us.
Well, there's an oral tradition, oral history that says that Duvalier, Satuyer's brother, he went to, after we were exiled, he made his way to Haiti to help out with the Haitian Revolution. Henry Christophe is from Grenada, and I believe he was Garifuna as well. There's something about, people with the fighting spirit. I mean, we embody that as a group of people. We've been fighting, we've been resisting, and we still are resisting this European framework. And the links are there. I mean, I see a lot of commonalities with the Haitian community and the Garifuna community as well, musically and culturally.
It's only a matter of time, brother. And for me, I've dedicated my life towards the enlightenment and advancement of African people. So it's part of my life work. And like Chronic say, I'm doing this for the love and not for the like. I'm not coming on Facebook and trying to post this. I've been like this as long as I knew myself. You understand? But again, like seeds, once you're planted and the conditions is right, you will germinate. We will start shooting, bearing leaves, fruits. So this is only the beginning of a continuation. We are the ancestors that has come forward again in this day and time.
I was at a town hall about 3 or 4 years ago, and the prime minister mentioned that there's 200,000 Vincentians in Brooklyn alone, more than the island. Um, our numbers in the Bronx are, I would say, north of 300,000. So the 200,000 in Brooklyn and the 300,000 in the Bronx, I mean, we could make some wonderful things happen. I mean, I'm talking about celebrate Brooklyn. I mean, uh, we need like a mass marketing campaign. We need to be in the Parkway in September. We need a Garifuna / St. Vincent um, float. Because we had it, there was one before back in the 80s from the Belizeans, the Belizean community. They had a float. For some reason, that stopped. We need to do that again. Because I think
The only,
that
the
would be a
only the only way that this is going to happen is that we have to make a collective effort to bring the information to the forefront. You understand? There's something called cultural pride. And if people don't have cultural pride, they gravitate to anything else.
right,
Every or anything else. That's why the saying goes, if you don't know where you come from, you basically would, or if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything.
right.
If you don't know where you come from, you would never get to where you're going. And most of us don't know our story. So we are basically trees without roots. So once the information has been disseminated properly, I think especially for the younger people, because all we have to do now is give them the information, which would be mental ammunition. You understand? So there's a I could remember, just to show you how powerful what you call I'm getting a brain freeze here. During I would say maybe, let's say 5 years before Kevin Little had that sound that made it on the international scene.
Turn me on.
Vincentians that's living here in New York, on Labor Day, you hardly like saw Vincentians with their flags on their head. You would find them wearing maybe a Jamaican flag, and some of them might be mad at me, but this is the truth.
That's
Or a
interesting.
Trinidadian flag. But once Kevin Little made that sound, it gave the people something to be proud of. You
Right.
understand? So what the song did is to restore the national pride amongst Vincentians here in the diaspora. And now we was brave to wear the Vinci flag big and bold now because we had somebody. So imagine now if our people knew our history in its fullness, what that would do in terms of restoring the national pride for our people. You understand? So we would act different because there is something unique about us as Vincentians, and many other Caribbean islanders could vouch for this. In terms of our hospitality is like second to none. There is a documentary called Strand Hunters, which was a group of guys that went to St. Vincent to do a documentary on the ganja. And they took with them a guy from Trinidad. And I would say in the middle of the documentary, he was explaining that he found the people in St. Vincent have a type of hospitality that is unmatched to anywhere he had traveled in the Caribbean. And not only that, we are very resilient. We might be calm, but don't mess with us.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
Most of the
Say
time
wait.
we are calm and loving people,
Right.
but the minute that you mess with us, it's like the lion come out.
Right.
So all these things are still rooted in us. Fortunate for me, I grew up with my great grandparents, both my great grandfather and grandmother, and I missed.
I want to mention something to Michelle as well. We have Garifuna class. My uncle teaches it in the Bronx. It's a whole curriculum. It's usually 3 months long for 2 hours every Saturday. And we have that. We have a Garifuna class in the Bronx. So I'm going to post it when it comes up again.
So someone asks, what's the St. Vincent Prime Minister think about Garifuna? for what I have, like I think it was maybe last year. Um, the prime minister, I guess it was a delegation of people that did some extensive research into the culture, and there was a lot of talk about the restoration of the culture, but I don't know if that was just political rhetoric. You know, I can't say if it was genuine. It's left to be seen. So for me, you have to show and prove. No, my thing, which was always my concern, if a very large group of people, you understand, that belongs to St. Vincent was taken away during a period of time when the country was oppressed, you understand? Then after emancipation, we gained independence in 1979. Up until now, there has not been any efforts to repatriate those people or to bring back our people who was exiled from St. Vincent. You understand? Collectively. You went to St. Vincent and you saw a lot of lands with just huge forests. You understand? Just sitting there and no one is doing anything with these lands. But the funny thing is that the government of St. Vincent refer to those lands as crown lands. You understand? So if we are an independent country, why are we still referring to the lands that is controlled by the government as crown land, meaning as in lands attributed to the monarchy of England? We are still calling the prison Her Majesty's Prison. We still refer to the National Stadium in Kingstown as Victoria Park, as in Queen Victoria. There are beaches that is called Princess Margaret Beach, Queen's Drive. So we need some serious reformation now. You understand? We need to get rid of all those names and all those colonial attachments from our people. And there's no doubt in my mind it's going to happen, whether certain people like it or not. And like you said before, we have to make certain people uncomfortable.
Right. And it's it's telling that we still have those names on the island. I mean, I didn't see anybody in St. Vincent that resembles the Queen, or I didn't see much of anybody British on the island when I was there. But I definitely want to point out that St. Vincent does have a governor general. He attended when we performed at the National Heroes Day celebration at the Obelisk. He was there, and I knew he was Garifuna because he resembles my grandfather.
Yeah, he is. Even his last name is Ballantyne.
Right. He's a chief. He's a descendant of a Garifuna chief because that same name, Baptiste, are still in rotation in St. Vincent. And these are Garifuna chief's names. And those names are in that book that I think you want to order. It's called Black Carib Wars by Chris Taylor. His father, Douglas Taylor, did a lot of research in St. Vincent. And he spent a lot of time with the Garinagu in Dominica in the 50s. So his son, he wrote that book. His son is here in New York. He works for Al Jazeera. And to get information out of him, you got to pay. Because he has access to the National Archives, and he could write about the history from that perspective because he has access to the archives. But I mean, I read his book, and I don't necessarily believe everything that he's wrote, because people have a way of framing the narrative of certain information to be useful for their benefit. So I had to go there and write a book from the Garifuna spirit, because every book that's written about us is not by us, and that's a problem. Even the authors in Honduras, they're very suppressed. We had a great scholar. He passed away about 3 years ago, Salvador Suazo, and all his books, he published about 10 books. They weren't promoted properly in Honduras. And the books were written in Garifuna. I'm trying to get a hold of them so we could translate them into English and Spanish, because in those books, he talks about our language, our history, our culture, and other components of the Garifuna experience in Garifuna. I don't believe I mentioned this to you, but were you aware that there's a Garifuna dictionary that was published in 1665 by Father Raymond Brenton? he spent a lot of time with the Garinagu in Dominica, and that dictionary is still in rotation.
I wasn't aware of that,
Yes,
but
I
it's something I
could.
would look into.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy. I have it in PDF format because that's one of the dictionaries that I study the language with too. I mean, it's kind of the old Garifuna language is not modern Garifuna, but I see the similarities with the languages with the language that we speak now. I mean, there's just so many historical data that we have to share. I mean, we need to have a symposium in which we could disseminate this to everybody. I mean, maybe we could do something at the Friends of Crown Heights, just talking about the
So
history.
Sylvia's asking if you could tell her what book. I'll try to copy and paste because I have it right in front of me here. It's called The Carib Wars: Freedom, Survival, and the Making of the Garifuna.
Yeah, that's Chris Taylor's book. And in that book, he has the information in terms of who wrote, well, who signed the signatories of the treaties, the two treaties. He has the signatories there. I have a copy of it on Facebook. I took a picture of it, and that's where I saw those last names: the Valentine, Baptiste, Toussaint. And there were some traditional Garifuna names on there too, but a lot of the names were had a French tone to them. So that's why I'm asking, or I'm assuming in my head that the relationship with the French was very intimate. For us to undertake their names, there's more to that relationship. There's more to that
Yes.
relationship, and I want to investigate it more. So, it's funny that you bring up Dr. Henry Clark because, as per my research, it points to France as well. I know that the Sorbonne University has a lot of data on us.
So what I would like to do, I would say probably within the next coming weeks, I'm gonna reach out to James
Right.
and a few other people in the community, and maybe we should have like a roundtable discussion and probably air it live as well. Because we need to continue this conversation.
Yes, we definitely do. We definitely do, especially about the history because I'm discovering different things. I just had a Facebook Live discussion with Dr. Castillo, and he's working. He has a doctorate. He's working on a second doctorate, and he's very knowledgeable about Garifuna history. We may need to include him. We have Adrian Fraser that's very knowledgeable about the history on St. Vincent itself. So we need to include these different people from the academic realm so they could tell us of their findings because it's more, and this event has to be like an all-day event, because we should include the foods as well.
Yes.
I was at an indigenous Garifuna Peoples event, the organization in Brooklyn, and a lot of their food is Garifuna food, but they just call it something else. It's something different.
True.
But it's all the same food. It's just the names have been changed. Yeah, so let me read some of the commentary by some of the people on here. Tony, how you doing, Tony? Petroglyphs. I visited those petroglyphs in Layu. Now, those are the ancient Arawak people. We need to get someone to do some type of testing to see how old these petroglyphs are. Has anyone done that in St. Vincent?
Yes. I think, well, there is a museum that was once located in the Botanical Gardens, and I think they probably moved it because I haven't been back home in a while
Right.
to the old public library in Kingstown because the government was also curating some work with the Alliance Francaise.
Okay.
Um, so they've been, and I think most recently too, when they was doing some excavation work at the Argyle International Airport, they just found they just unearthed basically some new artifacts within that region.
Are those artifacts in St. Vincent, or were they transported to another?
No. They're in St. Vincent.
That's interesting.
The funny thing too is that long ago there was a old, I'm pretty sure I could find it online. There was a cable and wireless telephone book. I can't remember the exact year, and they had like this pot that was found where the stadium is in Annisville. So Annisville itself was actually a settlement at one point in time before it became a cotton field. This is where the E.T. Joshua Airport is, the smaller airport. So Annisville was called the Greathead Estate at one point in time. And after Saw Greathead, I think that was the name of the European guy that was controlling that portion. Another white man by the name of Mr. Anno had bought the estate from the Greathead. And that's why to this day the place is referred to as Annosvale or Annosvale Airport. But during the excavation work, where the stadium is, that they found a lot of artifacts there as well. Because Annisvale actually have the largest stretch of beach, second to Kingstown. Well, Kingstown was used as the port,
Right.
was the port city.
Right. Yeah, I remember.
So that's the area where I grew up in, and people may not know this. There are a few petroglyphs in Annisvale as well.
Do you have any pictures of the petroglyphs?
I might be able to get them if I the thing is that where I live, there's a forest reserve above the airport. Because all those lands belong now to the same estate people called the Cassans. There is a plantation house which is located at Cassan Hill, which is like the first, the main incline before you get into Kingstown, or before you arrive at Sign Hill. There's a huge plantation house that is still there. At one point in time, it was the largest house in all of St. Vincent. They would refer to it as the house with 99 windows.
Okay.
So that's still sitting there. And
I may have seen it because I've seen a lot of nice houses in St. Vincent. I mean, I'm not sure if there's the homes or.
This is one of those old colonial houses, but it's massive. But it's sitting right on top of Cassan Hill, overlooking the whole of Sign Hill playing field, straight back up into what you refer to as Fountain or Bel Air. Okay. That's how far the plantation extended before they put the Annisvale Airport there. Now, so my great-grandfather picked cotton on that plantation when he was 11. My grandmother, who is still alive in St. Vincent, picked cotton there.
So we were exiled in 1797. At what year did they start bringing in the captives to work the sugar plantations in St. Vincent? In
terms of years and that timeline, I am not.
Orange Hill. I believe I passed by Orange Hill, Ava, when we were driving.
So Tom is asking if that's the one that's called Sherbury House or something. I am not sure. It would be the house belong to the Cassan estate. So there is one main house, and I think it's 3 other bungalows that's there, and a stable which they converted into a house. Because growing up as a kid, I played within the forest in the back of that plantation house. So I was in and out around there a lot.
Wow. I mean, there's so much. I mean, there has to be a program. Well, we have to create it in which Vincentian go back to Honduras to see their culture in its raw form. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we do have 81 Garifuna communities in Central America, stretching from the 5 in Nicaragua, in the area where it's called Bluefields, into Honduras. There's 54 communities along the Caribbean coast, 2 in Guatemala and 10 in Belize. So all this, the stretch of land from Belize to Nicaragua, there's Garifuna people living there on the Caribbean coast. I'm going to be going to Honduras for the 221st celebration of our arrival. I'm not sure what town is going to be celebrated in because they always select the Garifuna community to celebrate the arrival in. But I would love for people like yourself to come and everybody that's here um, to join me because I visited a lot of Garifuna communities in Honduras in my travels. I've been traveling to Honduras since I was like 10 years old, since 1985, every year, and I spent like 3 months in my Garifuna, my immediate Garifuna community of Aguan. And, after college, I started, earning some money and I rented cars and I used to drive to different Garifuna communities in different parts of Honduras. So, I know how to get to these places and I would just love to teach you guys, you know, everything in terms of the place settlement on the mainland of Honduras, which is called Cristales. That's where Garifuna people arrive, and then from there they disperse to different parts of the country and made their way to Nicaragua and Belize and Guatemala. There's a book that I want you to get a hold of, Roger. It's called A Nation Across Borders by Joseph Palacio.
Writing it down. Cross borders.
Yes, I believe it's called Ethnogenesis. I don't know let me get the full title for you. I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it in the commentary here. But he basically talked about it's a series of essays that talks about the Garifuna experience. They had the essay there about Marie Louise Chatelier, which is Chatelier's daughter. She survived the exile, and we retain that oral history. Her family are currently in Belize. Her name was Gulisi. She survived the exile. She had children in Honduras. At the time that she got there, they were persecuting Garifuna people. So she fled from Honduras to Belize. One of her children died on the way over there, and they settled in, I believe, the Stan Creek area of Belize. So that book is very important. And there's another book by Nancy Gonzalez, Sojourners of the Caribbean. How you doing, To? Fernandez, Kato, Nibu. I'm just greeting a brother from my community in Aguan, To Fernandez. Lisa Jade, how you doing? Mr. Felix Valentin, how you doing, sir? What would be the percentage of St. Vincent brothers and sisters consider themselves from Garifuna roots? Well, we have the 5 areas in St. Vincent: Sandy Bay, Greg's, you just mentioned Owea, Rose Hall, Stubbs, Baroli is a Garifuna name. I was told we was at the island with brother Felix. We were talking about Baroli, that it's a Garifuna name. Baroli means borrowed from in Garifuna. So the names are indicative of what happened to those people, that somebody took their land, and that's what they named it, Barauli. Like somebody borrowed their land.
Even to go a little further, right? Like the people from those villages are built different physically from the rest of the population.
I've noticed.
When you drive through those, they're like warriors.
I've noticed.
And it's funny. It's funny that at certain point in time you could have identified which village a particular individual from by his structure. You could have tell, okay, like this person here from Greg's, or he's from Stubbs, or he's from Barley.
Right.
And Barley is one of the main fishing communities in St. Vincent, and they usually hunt a smaller whale called a blackfish.
Okay.
If you see in that documentary. So the people in Barley has like a very shiny tone to their copper tone to their skin, and I think that is simply because of their diet, eating a lot of those whale meat and so on.
Blackfish. And you say that's a documentary, Blackfish?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, which part of the
San
island
Vicente and
is
one is Mabriga. Go ahead.
which part of the island is the cannons aimed inward? Which part of the
That
island
would
is
be
that?
Fort Charlotte,
Fort Charlotte.
which is yes, which is, I would say, adjacent from Kingstown. It's in a community called Edinburgh
Edinburgh.
or
Okay.
Edinburgh.
So Judy Boucher's from that area.
Yes.
Edinburgh. Okay. See, I see. I mean, it's not coincidence that my grandmother, that song "I Don't Mind," she loved that song, man. I always try to figure out why she loved that song so much. And there's a brother from St. Vincent who I happened to, I met him at a party. Soka Jones had a party and he was performing. I made sure I attended that performance. I took a picture with him. I told him I'm Garifuna, my grandmother loves you. He was a real cool brother, Winston Soso. From what I
So
understand, he
I've
lives in Brooklyn,
I've
right?
also said in Oya that there are cannons in Oya that is facing inward as well.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. See, I'm writing all this down. So once I go back, I want to check out these places. So Fort Charlotte, Edinburgh.
And there is another fort called Fort Juvenet, which is located in Villa. It's a small island next to Young Island, which coincidentally is owned by Dr. Ballantyne, the Governor General.
Union Island is owned by Dr. Valentine.
No, Young Island,
Young
which
Island.
is the closest island to the mainland. You could actually swim over there, or it's a small 2-minute ferry ride.
Young Island.
So,
And
someone just said that Judy Boucher is from Dixon.
Young Island was, I heard there was an oral story in terms of how the ancestors, they gave up a horse for Young Island, something like that.
For
I
Young
read that
Island, yes.
somewhere.
One of the chief traded Young Island for a stallion.
Do you know the name of the chief?
No, but I could find out.
Okay.
So Union Island and Beckway, those islands was what you call stud centers at one point in time. They was used for breeding slaves.
Stud
Breeding,
centers.
yes.
Okay, before you go on, they had those centers here in America as well. The Maryland, New Orleans, Louisiana. There were certain areas in Louisiana and Maryland and certain parts of Mississippi in which they would breed slaves. So did you said that in Union Island this happened?
Union Island, Union, Beckway, Canoan, they had stud centers located on those islands. And if you look to this day, most of the men that come from those islands are very tall in stature.
Okay.
Yeah. They're like some Shaquille O'Neal type of people.
Interesting. They must
Yeah.
be descendants of Tutsis in Rwanda or Senegal
Possible.
because they're tall. You know, a lot of Senegalese I see over here in Harlem, they're relatively tall and they have long limbs. Wow, that's interesting. So, stud centers. That's wow. Now, all this happened after we were exiled. That these developments
Yes.
happened, the sugar plantation, the slavery, um, the breeding centers. I believe slavery was abolished in the early 1800s in St. Vincent, from what I
Yes.
understand, like
We
1834.
we we didn't experience an extended period of slavery in St. Vincent.
So that was roughly about 30 years, from
Of,
1774 to 1834.
of 30 years. But there are also accounts that before the wars that the Garifuna people probably put up a longer resistance than what they're reporting in some of these logs.
Right. It's a possibility. I mean, again, I'm researching the music with Bodoma, and we're gonna start having workshops here in the Bronx in which you're gonna explain the hymns, and we're gonna find that information in our hymns. Our entire experience as a group of people, we're gonna find that in the hymns. I'm not sure if you're aware of the Dagur religion. It has its own music style. We also have another genre of music performed by the women and men separately. It's called Abay Mahani and O Mahani. And within these songs, there's a lot of information as well. But let me go back to the good songs. We're talking about songs that are close to 800, maybe 1,000 years old. The youngest song is 100 years old. And I haven't made a count of how many songs we have because I just started researching it. But our history is in our music. And the information that you're giving me right now, I'm going to compare it to what the music says or the hymns. And we're going to have to definitely revisit this conversation again. Were you aware that we celebrate, well, New York State, there's a proclamation that Garifuna Heritage Month is from March 11th to April 12th. That's when New York State celebrates it. We got the legislation passed for that.
No, I wasn't fully aware. I'm writing all these things down.
Okay, shout out to Natural Mystics. He said, Pablo, you may want to check out Moon Hole in Beckway. Have you been there, Roger, to Moon Hole?
I haven't been there, but I think you could I know where it is.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would love to go to St. Vincent with you, man, and go to these different places. I mean, we have to do that. I mean, at some point, we definitely have to do that, like a travel cultural exchange between St. Vincent and Honduras. Because we still have people with last names that I saw in St. Vincent as well, like Harry, Baptiste, which is Batiste in English. I think it was changed. It was Spanishized, but they're the same people. Laboriel would be Laborde in St. Vincent.
Yeah, you have a lot of those.
And Thomas. We still have people with the last name Thomas in Honduras.
So my great grandmother was a Thomas.
Okay. And what area of St. Vincent she's from?
She was from Caliacua.
Caliacua.
And you could hear the name. It's also French.
Right. Sounds Garifuna too. Caligua. Galigua. Yeah, that sounds like a Garifuna word. We do have an Arawak linguist. Her name is Keisha Joseph. She's from St. Lucia. I'm going to have a conversation with her as well in the near future because I think she has a lot of information from the linguistic side in terms of how the transition happened from Kalina to Garifuna and so forth. So I'm reading what Ava is saying. Talk to the people also there. There are people in the community who knows our history because our ancestors told a lot of stories that was passed down to many generations. Now, Ava, I believe you're from Sandy Bay, if I'm not mistaken. I know we were talking about Oya before. Sandy Bay is relatively close to Oya. It's like the next town over. But yeah, I definitely have to spend more time in St. Vincent the next time I go around. It's a bunch of stones carved, settled in homes. Okay. Natural Mystic, you gotta tell me what you're referring to exactly.
He's referring to Moon Hole in Beckway.
Moon Hole, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scorpion, he mentioned a cave in the Dry River area that people are scared to go into. Are you aware of that cave?
The one that I'm familiar with would be at Black Point Tunnel, which is before you get to the Jai River.
Okay.
Um, it's in I can't remember the exact community, but that was carved out of the rock to allow the British to carry the sugar.
Right.
So I guess they had set up like what might have been like a waft there. And a few years ago, I think during low tide, they found a ship that was exposed. And yes, so there's actually one of those old, could have been, could have been a slave ship, or could have been maybe one of those merchant or cargo ships from back then. But
Right.
it didn't stay too long before the sea came back and swallowed it up.
And that wasn't there wasn't an effort to preserve that particular ship?
No, which I was really disappointed
Yeah, that's
with the government with. That's something I think that they should have really excavated. I mean, it's still there. I think every now and then, depends on the season, maybe it would come up because there are sometimes when the tide shift and would expose certain things, but
okay.
it's still there.
Bayera, Cam S2
Yes, it's
mentioned Bayera.
it's at Byra Hill.
Byra Hill. Where's Byra
Yeah,
Hill located in St. Vincent?
that's before you get to Georgetown.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm thinking in my mind, I mean, I'm familiar with um the Carib country, which is on the north side of the island, but it just seemed to me that the entire island is Garifuna.
The thing is that the reason is because Owea and Sandy Bay is actually a reservation. So after they exiled most of the people to Baliso and then Rotan, some of them was put out on Sandy Bay, and that is very, like I would say, the most northernest part of the country, which is actually close to the volcano.
Right, right.
So they were strategically placed in that position.
This is amazing, man. I mean,
So
I didn't get a chance to visit
during the last eruption of La Soufrière in Saint Vincent, they had to evacuate that whole community of Sandy Bay and Oya because of the volcano.
Now, the last eruption happened in the 70s, from what I believe.
I would say that her mom laughed at the term reservation.
Yeah, why weren't they? I mean, I know in Dominica there's a Carib Council in government. Why you think that didn't happen in St. Vincent?
Well, remember, after the exile, the government at that particular point in time, there's also a British general by the name of Thomas Huxley. You understand? You have what you call the West India Regiment, which was actually the fighting force of the British,
Okay.
who was responsible for, I would say, keeping things in order in St. Vincent.
And his name is Thomas Huxley.
Thomas Huxley, yes.
So he were the precursor to Victor Hoggs and Ralph Abercrombie, I believe. These are.
I would think so.
Hmm.
So at one point in time in St. Vincent, they didn't have police officers, well, black police officers. All the officers, as far as I understand, our overseers was white. And uh, over a period of time now, they started handing these positions to the black men. They start giving them these ranks. And slowly, blacks started policing themselves, and little by little now it's like the system was put on automatic. So you would find places like Annosville, places like Hadley's village. Hadley, which would have been another plantation going out to the north of St. Vincent. You would have places like Peter's Hope,
I think I passed
which
by
is
that.
run. Yes, all these centers was basically run by the remnants of these colonial masters. You understand? And the people that own them today are the descendants from those colonial times. They have some of the most arable land in St. Vincent. And there was no efforts made to overturn those lands back to the people.
So, which side of the island has the more fertile arable land? Would it be the windward or the leeward side?
I would say the thing is, I mean, St. Vincent is very is small. You know, it's 130 something miles long, and it's much shorter in width.
Right.
So the leeward side and the northern side is not really that far from each other per se.
Right.
So if the volcano is sitting at the northernmost part of the island, and then we get that fertile soil simply because of the volcanic ash that was spewed into the atmosphere throughout the land over a period of time, that got mixed into the soil and made that soil that enriched the soil. So it's kind of hard for one to say which part of the island, but I would probably more attribute that to the northern part of the island. You have places like Poteni Valley or Mesopotamia that is green all year round, even when there's droughts on the island. But it's because it's sitting in that valley. It's always cool, you know, and moisture laden, I would say.
There's been talks. I've been looking at different commentary and having marijuana grown in St. Vincent um, as a crop to be exported. If that was grown in St. Vincent, you think it'll change the economy and so forth for the people?
It Yes, it would change the economy, but it would not benefit the local people or the farmers who has been persecuted and penalized all these years for the production of marijuana. They wouldn't be the benefactors of this system, you know. And there are people who are down there now that are actually setting up shop.
Huh. Because
So this is a whole another conversation.
that's interesting. Because it's big in the United States.
Ava is also right. She said the Bernard plantation. So the Bernards, the Cassans, and the Hadleys, and all these people, these are remnants from those colonial times. You have what you call the Couriers Company or Couriers Trading Company, which is an offspring from that same Cassans. Now, when you're going into Kingstown, I don't know if when you went there, if you flew in at the international airport or you
The
flew
new
into
one.
the
We flew into the new one.
okay. So, but you must pass the first airport in Honnesville.
Right. I did see that airport.
Right. So all those lands, those flat lands there was owned by one person. And this is what these colonial guys would do at one point in time. Again, this is why they refer to the lands now as crown lands. They would send people from England to work these lands or oversee these lands, and what they would tell them is that you could take the land as far as the eye can see. So in most of these communities, you would find from one side of the valley to the next side was owned by one particular person. There's also a village in the north that they call it Victoria Village.
Victoria Village. So there's a Victoria Park and a
Yes.
Victoria Village. Okay.
Yes.
Let me just read a commentary by a brother who I've been, on this journey with in terms of producing shows and talking about the history. Hector Zapata, and those lands, and he's referring to these crown lands. Those lands were the target according to Chris Taylor's research. This confirms it. So we were exiled because of those lands, so to speak, as Garifuna people, because we put up resistance to those lands, which were in turn to be used for sugar cultivation. That's why we were exiled, because of those particular lands. As you know, the British had other territories that they maxed out in terms of setting up the institution of slavery. And they needed more land because they were trafficking a lot of captives at that time. But I mean, Roger, we could stay on here for for
I
hours
know.
talking about this. But do you have any closing remarks?
Um, what I would like to see is that again, I know because we are both getting feed from your side and my side.
Right,
I, want to make that connection with more of my Garifuna brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora, and it has been like a lifelong dream of mine to reconnect our culture.
right,
So none of this is happening that is happening now is happening by accident.
right,
This is the time. You know,
right,
we had put it out in the universe, it had to germinate, and now it's manifesting in
right,
our time. So again, a lot of the people who are living in St. Vincent are not fully aware of their history. So we would like to have more talks with individuals who have more in-depth knowledge of our story, that we could come on here and share it,
right,
because we don't realize the power of this medium that we have here right now,
right.
and how many people that we could reach. This is just the beginning. I mean, this is the first time that we've had this exchange on here, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna go from strength to strength. And I have some interesting brothers that I would bring when the time is right, that I know would contribute a lot more information. And some of these brethren are elders, people who are maybe 20, 40 years my senior.
Are they here in Brooklyn?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm thinking recording it, putting it on YouTube, create a fan page so that we could discuss it off or online. Um, we definitely have the technology in our favor, and I favor technology over anything because it's enriches our lives. And I think the conversation definitely has to continue because Saint Vincent, after reading the history books, tells a different. There's a couple of narratives of how we came to Saint Vincent. One is in terms of the great Mansa Musa leaving Mali, coming to the West, and this is information I got from reading Ivan
not
Van
not not to
Sertima.
stop you, right?
Hmm.
So there are some parallels here that I don't know if you're familiar with King Jaja.
King Jaja. No, I'm not. Who is that?
So um what I've heard orally is that King Jaja was actually the brother of Mansa Musa.
The brother of Mansa Musa.
Yes, that was sold into captivity and ended up in St. Vincent for an extended period of time.
Now, which book did you get this information from, or this just
This
oral
I
history?
got this from oral accounts, but there is while I was here talking to you, I was doing some side research. But I would say the next conversation that we have,
Right.
I'll probably expound on it some more.
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
But these are things that I've heard, and I think someone like Adrian Fraser might probably be able to give you a bit
Okay.
um, more in-depth information into this. But if the oral accounts are true, is that Mansa Musa had left Mali and came to the Caribbean looking for his brother.
That's very interesting. His brother, Mansa Musa, was the king in Mali, right? His
Yeah.
brother, Abu Bakari, he was the one that actually made the trip. Abu Bakari. So that's something that we have to clarify in terms of who exactly made the trip in the 1200s. because the trips, the time period is between 900 and 1200. I'm also researching Islamic scholars too, because at that time, Islam was the religion in that part of Africa. And I'm finding a lot of information of those type of trips that came to the Americas. Because there's a other side of our narrative that says that St. Vincent was a port. And they traded with different indigenous people in the Caribbean and in Central America. These
Have
African
you come across the works of Dr. Ivan van Sertima?
Yes,
There's
I
a
have.
book They Came Before Columbus.
Yes, I have that book.
Okay.
Now, in one of his lectures, Ivan van Sertima, he mentioned the Black Caribs in Panama. And I can send you that. I'll put that lecture in the commentary. I believe he mentioned them in Panama or Honduras, but there were Black Caribs in Honduras, he said. I believe it was Honduras. So I don't remember which date he mentioned, but there was a lot of ports set up by the Africans and the indigenous people in which they traded, because we could see the commonality of the food, not necessarily the food, but the stoneheads in Mexico. I believe there's a stonehead in Oaxaca. That's an indigenous part of Mexico, and the people are still there. But there's different parts of Mexico in which you find African stone hedges and a lot of things that you will only find in Africa.
So someone said it's so informative. Keep it going. They tune in late, but will be tuned in for the full live when
Yeah, I'm
it's
gonna
done.
save the
Thank you.
conversation. That's Sister Jackie. She's another person that's really into the culture. She joined I think there was a flow, a Vinci flow. I think Jackie joined that flow, and she's trying to connect with the Vinci people too. She's Garifuna from Honduras as well. I mean, there's a whole movement going on, Roger, in which we're just reconnecting. We just have to create a
So
space. We have to create a space
also,
for these events to happen.
yes, there's also a lot of scholars within the Rastafari community in St. Vincent, because those are the ones really who have really kept the culture alive, per se. The Rastas, not only throughout the world, throughout the whole Caribbean, but they're the only ones that uplift the Afrocentric character of the African people.
Right.
So long ago, you would hear those Rasta men of old reminding you of the Garinagu or the Garifuna. We wasn't taught this in the schools. And some of these elders are still around today, which is, I tried to actually have one of them present, but it didn't go as planned.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure on my next live I would have him with us, and he's a very interesting scholar to to have this conversation. So I know it's gonna get even more interesting having him here with me.
Right. Well, I never met a Rasta that didn't know the Garifuna story or appreciate it. I mean, that's the community that embraces us. Because I was talking with Dr. Ronnie Castillo, and he made a good point in terms of the political correctness of mentioning Garifuna people in certain lights. I mean, it's not acceptable to mention black people in a very empowering light in the public space. I mean, you can't say that we were millionaires and we had our own island and we governed and we resisted colonization. I mean, that's not acceptable speech in public spaces. So it becomes very political when we start talking about these things and the way that people perceive them, because they're not used to perceiving black people in that light in terms of empowering and protecting other black people that were in the system of slavery. I mean, that's not acceptable at all. Not even talking about in terms of black people being explorers. That's not acceptable either, because
True.
this whole Eurocentric worldview is that black people are savages. They're, you know, they're ignorant, they're docile, they're, you know, everything negative under the sun is what embodies black people. And this is the worldview, and many people believe it.
Yes, a lot of people have bought that story hook, line, and sinker. And this is, again, the damaging effects of colonialism. And I've said to people, since slavery, there has not been any institution that has set up to rehabilitate the minds of black people globally.
Right.
So we are a damaged people in need of repair.
Right.
You understand? It's amazing how some of us
Yeah,
so
you're right,
someone asked,
David.
I was actually, my family is from Honnestville, and I would add one of the oldest families in Honnestville to this day.
Hmm.
Yes. So my family has been in Honnestville over 100 years.
Okay. I want to read a comment that brother David Martin. I met David when I was over there in March. He's of Jamaican descent. I mentioned to him if he knew anything about the Taino in Jamaica, and because the Taino, they are cultural cousins, along with the Garinagu and so forth. They have a museum in Jamaica, the Taino people. They developed the museum. And I was talking to one of my Jamaican brethren, and he said that the Taino people, they thought they were Philippine. They didn't know that they were indigenous to Jamaica. They always thought that they were from the Philippines or somewhere, which gives, which makes me think about the way that the British folks really trained. They developed like a system to psychologically like
Yes.
create this narrative about ourselves, and people brought into it via the religion, via Catholicism, which I think St. Vincent has embraced as well, because they were, you know, the people were subjugated to the religion. And I don't know how violently, I know here in America, people were, you know, indoctrinated to that religion by force. I don't know how it was in St. Vincent.
Well, it's the same way because I remember when I was younger coming up, and funny thing is that in the earlier part of my life, I started reading works from like Dr. York and all these scholars. So I had a serious rebellious spirit at that point in time. Even when I was in high school, I remember boycotting a history class,
Hmm.
shutting down the class for a day. I got kicked out, you know, like because we had this teacher who was a white lady. She was from the Peace Corps,
Right,
and I think around that time we was dealing with the Mayan and Aztecs conquest.
right.
And for me, that wasn't sufficient. That's not what I wanted to hear. So I managed to cause the class to to boycott that lesson because we really wanted to learn our history.
Right.
So I was that young and being so rebellious. But a lot of the people in on the island itself are really, I would say, brainwashed deeply when it comes religiously. You understand? They've been properly indoctrinated.
Okay. Wow. I mean, the religion, I see it in Honduras as well. Because a lot of people in Honduras, they stop practicing our cultural customs. I mean, with the dancing and the singing, they stop that to adhere to their religion. And it's a very common thing here in New York as well, in which people do not want to go to Garifuna functions because, oh, we're going to be dancing, we're going to be singing, and that's not part of my religion. That's the way that the colonization has taken form. It's gotten sophisticated to that point as well, in which you adhere to a religion, and it stops you from being yourself. Now, I mean, there's a way to get to these people. I mean, it's discouraging that people will buy into that, but I noticed that a lot of people that adhere to the religion or practice a certain religion, they don't really necessarily know much about their history. And they
True.
only practice it because of tradition. You know, their grandmother did it, so, you know, why stop now? And they don't have a lot of ammunition to questionize these religions.
So this is the thing, this is what is happening now, you know, is that we are coming with this information.
Hmm.
And I'm not, in a sense, worried about the older people. because I would use a biblical reference. It said you can't put new wine into old wineskin, because back in the distant past, they would in some places they would use the skins of animals to bottled wine. But if you put the new wine into the old wine skin, I guess maybe if the wine is more acidic at that point in time, it would cause the wine skin to break apart. So this information here might not sit too well with some of these people who are suffering from cognitive dissonance. The younger people now who don't have that aspect of fear in them, that are inclined to what's going on, we just need to present them with the right information.
Right.
Because they're not acting off of fear. I remember growing up and hearing my I was fortunate to grow up with my great grandmother. So she was very religious, and I was brought up into their religion with a more military style. So whether rain or sun, I used to have to walk from Honnestville to a place called Belair, because they was Anglican.
Okay.
Every Sunday, I would walk maybe about 5 miles to church. I'm back. Sometimes I was fortunate to get a ride maybe from a church member or somebody that knew us, But sitting in church, something always felt wrong. I always knew that there was something more to this. So I started questioning it very, very early. So at the age of 11, I was out there debating with older men,
Right.
until I got to a point that I would say I was desiring the information so much that things started manifesting in my direction.
Right.
And not until I found one book written by Dr. Malachi Z. York called Breaking the Spell, like a light bulb went off in my head. And after that, there was no turning back to this day. So information is the right because people could be educated, but educated on the wrong type of things. So when people are running around saying, "Oh, education is going to free you," it depends on the education that you've received.
Right.
So most of us are like androids that has been programmed colonially. You understand? And there are a lot of black people who are living European lives, or black people with European minds. So they can't function with this type of information. It would really throw them off, or it would make them upset.
I was watching
Then
an
you would
interview.
get into,
I was watching an interview by Hugh Masekela, and he said that a lot of African people are good imitations of the African colonizers. And this is a musician from South Africa saying this. I want to read a couple of commentary over here, Roger. Let me go back a bit. Hector said that Mansa Musa is known to have gone to Mecca. He gave away gold on his way to Mecca, and he bankrupted certain economies over there by giving away gold. And after he made the pilgrimage, well, the Hajj that you call it, the pilgrimage to Mecca, that's where he brought back all these scholars to Mali and created these centers of learning in Djenne and Timbuktu. And I was talking to a scholar yesterday. He's a dean at the John Jay, and he told me that, oh yeah, that's common knowledge. We know that Djenne and Timbuktu are the Silicon Valley of back in the day. And this was surprising coming from a white guy that he would know this. And I was like, we need to have a Facebook Live discussion with you, because a lot of people will believe you since you're white more than a black guy with a beard.
Now, the funny thing is, growing up, people would make reference to Timbuktu, and they would make fun. I remember in high school, people would say, "You're so dumb, like you come from Timbuktu." So they made Timbuktu seem like it was a place where stupid people came from.
Right.
When Timbuktu was the learning center of the world.
Right. To the effect that they had these navigation schools in which these different explorers from the Iberian Peninsula, they would visit Timbuktu or Djenne to learn about those currents that you mentioned of, because they already had that information in Mali, in terms of which currents come to the Americas. And
So
this goes
now,
back to the
I'm not
Dogon. These go back to the Dogon that gave them information, and they just put
true.
it in textbook style and to share with the explorers. So I believe that for us as Garifuna people, Mali is a very important place to
So,
visit.
so now hear this, right? Isn't it
Mhm.
funny that the same currents that the Garifuna people would use to sail up to the other islands was called the Guinea current?
Guinea current.
Yes, you could look it up.
I'm gonna reach out to Ronoko Rashidi. He's one of the disciples of Ivan Van Sertima, and he knew him when he was still alive. I want to do a Facebook Live with him, or invite him to New York.
Yeah,
Maybe he could be
he
part of
was
that
in
panel
New York
discussion.
last year, early
Oh,
last
okay,
year. Yeah, I
okay.
went to his lecture. It was actually not too far from where I'm living now. I bought one of his books there.
Yeah, because he's important. Having persons like him in this panel discussion, when we do this event in which we're informing others of Garifuna history, I think that's important, along with Dr. Frazier. I'm going to see if I could bring in Dr. Palacio from Belize. Um, there was another historian that has an alternative history of Garifuna culture, Dr. Aranda from Belize. He's saying that St. Vincent never happened. We came from Olduvai, George, and we winded up in Honduras and in Central America. So St. Vincent for Garifuna people never happened. So his perspective, that brother's perspective, is important as well, Dr. Aranda. And I went to see him a couple of years ago in Brooklyn. Um, it's still a lot of information that we have to piece together. That's why I'm using the music to do that, because that comes from us. It's not coming from another community. It's coming directly from us, from our experience, because I believe that the history is interwoven into the music. So we have to analyze the music first. But this talk with you was very enlightening to me. I have like 3 pages of notes that I have here of
Yeah,
places that I want to go in
I've
St. Vincent.
been doing the same thing.
But I want to wrap it up and mention to people that they have to, if they really want to learn about Garifuna history, they have to purchase these 3 books. The first one would be Sojourners of the Caribbean by Nancy Gonzalez. The second book will be A Nation Across Borders by Dr. Joseph Palacio. And the third one will be that Black Carib Wars book. And I know Dr. Edgar Adams and others. There was another scholar from St. Vincent. His name escapes me. He written a couple of books in regards to the Carib experience on St. Vincent as well. We have to reference these people. I know Dr. Adams, I believe his name is. I met him in March. He needs to be part of this conversation as well, along with Dr. Adrian Frazier. But yeah, Roger, you could have the last word. I want to wrap it up now because it's getting late and
Well,
you
again,
know.
I'm grateful. Thanks again for inviting me, to speak. I really enjoy this reasoning. For the people who are watching, I would advise you to share the video,
Yes, please.
because we need to really tighten up the community. There's a
Right.
lot for us to learn from each other. Like the saying goes, each one teach one. My
Right.
cup is still empty, and I'm my arms are and mine is wide open. I want to learn. My main thing is I want to learn more about the culture. So we're gonna do this again pretty soon, and I'll invite a few colleagues of mine the next time that we are doing this live. So again, thank you.
Well, thank you for accepting the invite and, bringing your wealth of information and sharing all that knowledge with us from the island itself. Because a lot of the information that you just shared with me, I had no clue of. In terms of the different spaces and having Ava mention, well, giving her input of what she remembers, these conversations are very important. Let me just read a commentary over here. Dr. Jan Carew in Rape of Paradise also makes reference. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Jan Carew, he was a scholar over here at Lincoln, I believe, and he spoke a lot about the Caribs in St. Vincent and Dominica. There's another scholar by the name of Lennox Honeychurch. Are you familiar with him by any chance,
No,
Roger? Okay, he's a
no, I'm not.
scholar. He talks about the Caribs in Dominica.
There's a chance that maybe I probably might have came across a few of his lectures on Facebook because they're nice that I'm up and I'm just watching
Right.
lectures or documentaries one after the other. So
Yeah, I have a couple of his lectures. I'm gonna send them to you. We also have brothers that teach at the CUNY system that are familiar with the Caribbean. We have a brother by the name of Lois Waldron, and he's a professor at I believe City College, and he talks about a lot of the Caribbean information. I mean, we have like a whole litany of scholars that are interested in this stuff. I have brothers from the Taino community that have been researching and studying. We just got to bring all these people together and have one big symposium and just talk about our ancestral experience. And I look forward to working with you and making that happen. It would be ideal if we could do it for Garifuna Heritage Month between that time period, March 11th and April 12th.
I'm with it.
Okay.
I'm ready.
All right. All right. So let's work on getting the space, and I'll work on reaching out to these people. And then we'll take it from there.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So again, everyone, thank you for joining us. Share the link, add to the commentary. After I get off now, I'm going to add those books so you guys could pick them up on Amazon. And you could put down any questions that you have there about the Garifuna community in Central America. I'll try my best to answer them. We're 81 communities in Central America. We have we're in 21 communities in America, with the largest in the South Bronx here in New York. We're close to 300 to 400,000 in the South Bronx. And we're in major cities like Miami, Houston, Los Angeles. We're in Seattle. We're in Boston. There's a Garifuna community, I believe, in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
We're in a lot of areas. There's even Garifuna people in Detroit. I met the Garifuna people from Belize. They're in Chicago. There's a Garifuna restaurant in Chicago. I mean, we're
Interesting.
in a lot of different pockets. And I've made it my business to reach out to these people and created some type of relationship with them through our shared culture. So I put the link in there for the fan page that myself and Brother Hector worked on in terms of having a repository for the Garifuna experience. It's called Historia Garifuna History, meaning history, Garifuna history. That's the literal translation of it. And we just want everybody to go to that fan page because we have a lot of information there. We even have a letter that Satuyev wrote to his troops in French. We have that letter. I came about that letter with from one of the brothers. I think it was Belize Abroad that shared it, and I talked to them about it, and he was like, "Yeah, this is a letter that Satuyev wrote during one of the Carib Wars. I believe it was in 1775 to rally his troops." I mean, there's a lot still that we have to talk about, Roger, and I just encourage everyone to make their commentary or questions in this thread that we have here, and let's keep the conversation going. I hope you guys share it.
Definitely.
And yeah, we're gonna continue talking, Roger, because there's a lot to be done, and we're just gonna continue.
Definitely. So, guys, thanks again for watching. It's been a pleasure. Continue sharing the video. And I guess peace and blessings, brother.
Yes, peace to you, Roger.
Peace
We'll
and
be talking
blessings.
soon.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just finish off in Spanish because some people are watching in Spanish. Nosotros estamos hablando de el pueblo garífuna en San Vicente y nosotros ya tenemos mucha información que nosotros podemos poner juntos sobre nuestra experiencia en San Vicente. Como el hermano Roger nos estaba contando, tenemos mucho haciendas o lugares donde después que nos exiliaron de la isla, llevaron esclavos para esa parte de San Vicente, después que ellos nos mandaron para Honduras. Y esa parte es, yo la tengo una lista de ellos aquí. Si ustedes tienen una pregunta sobre eso, lo pueden poner donde los comentarios y yo se lo puedo explicar más. Pero la isla de San Vicente era todo del pueblo garífuna, era un estado de la gente garífuna. Ellos se gobernaban ellos mismos allí en la isla. Y para mí es importante que nosotros hablemos de esto porque nuestra experiencia en Honduras nos afecta porque no sabemos nuestra historia. Y nosotros creemos que somos catrachos. Yo no me identifico como catracho porque el país de Honduras casi no ha hecho nada por nuestro pueblo, históricamente. Yo quiero seguir la conversación. Usted puede compartir esta conversación con otras personas y yo y Roger vamos a trabajar y otra gente vamos a trabajar en eventos podemos hablar de nuestra historia real del pueblo garífuna. Y eso va a pasar en marzo, entre marzo 11 y abril 12. Son las fechas que nosotros estamos viendo para tener estas conversaciones. So once again, thank you everyone. Please comment, share the conversation, and hope you guys have a good night. I'm going to be having more live conversations. I'll post them up. Follow me, inbox me, ask questions. Please, let's just continue the knowledge transfer. So Roger, I salute you. Thank you for your time.
Excellent.
And we'll be talking soon.
Definitely.
All right, brother. You have a good night.
You too.